Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Roto World Football Show Week 6 Waiver Wire Q&A. I am Patrick Doherty with waivers guru Kyle Dvorchak, who has broken down the entire Week 6 landscape when it comes to the waiver wire. Quarterbacks to stream, running backs who must be added, receivers who must be added and will no way fail, like the receiver out of the week last week, Kyle, Dontavian Wicks, the classic Zoomer slappy play that millennials and boomers, also even silent generation folks, fell for. Everyone fell for the Dontavian Wicks scam.
I was saying to play him in air yards only league because he actually did have a great air yards only performance.
He did. Our guy absolutely loves to leave yards on the field. And no, Wicks was a week 5 waiver bust who could immediately come roaring back as soon as week 6. These things just happen. It's a tedious game we play sometimes. We've had some really good waiver wire ad so far this year, though. Kyle, who is the waiver wire ad of the week ahead of week 6, you would say?
Waiver wire ad of the week for week 6 is one Tyrone Tracy, rookie running back for the New York Giants. We're going back to the Zoomer well with a rookie compared to last year's second-year player. It makes me feel especially comfortable at running back, though, where we have already locked in the volume. We saw last week he outcarried his backups 18-4, and he was explosive on a per-touch basis. We're locking in touches. We're locking in talent. I do feel that this is the clear number 1 ad, albeit it is a strong week for waivers.
It's a little different than the other running back situations, too, with Tank Bigsby and Chase Brown, where you have sophomores kind of trying to emerge in a committee, like push aside like a veteran player, so to speak. Where Tyrone Tracy is a rookie without any baggage, so they liked him coming into the year. He's not like Tank Bigsby, who had the rough rookie year, or Chase Brown, who had the lightly used rookie year until the end of the season. He was just an unknown commodity for them that they liked, that they drafted, they talked about all summer. Then their journeyman veteran gets hurt, and he immediately has a good game. I think there's a pretty good chance, even if Devin Singletary's back in week 6, that Tyrone Tracy kind of immediately has taken control of this back. Well, definitely not like the most likely outcome. But I do just think it's a plausible outcome. They could almost just like make a 1-for-1 switch. That's maybe a little too optimistic, but it might sound silly, but there's a big difference when like a rookie does this versus when a second-year guy does this. And just really, really good. He got 1 start and instantly had the best performance by any Giants running back all season. So it's really, really good stuff from Tyrone Tracy in week 6.
Yeah, I think your point about him just not having any preconceived notions on what the coaches think of him is really probably underrated. I think it can't be overstated because we get our chance to roll the dice on how good is this player and how much do the coaches trust him. We rolled the dice last year with Tank Bigsby and got snake eyes. Truly one of the worst rookie seasons for a day 2 running back we've seen in a long time. And if it was a pure meritocracy this year, he would be out touching Travis Etienne 20-10 every week, or 15-7, 15-8. He has outplayed him, and frankly, he's outplayed most running backs to the moon and back. He's been one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL this year, but they are still insistent on Travis Etienne, who's good in his own right, but hasn't played to the Tank Bigsby level. They're still insistent that he's their starter. He's going to be getting the majority of touches going forward. And I think if they didn't have last year as a sort of a predetermining factor on their usage in his second year, he may have already supplanted Etienne. And even beyond that, for the Giants, it's much easier to rationalize quote benching, maybe making a 1B style role for Devin Singletary, who's a veteran that they added in the free agent market for suspending a first-round pick on running back, albeit 3 years ago now. But I still think the investment from a team level perspective is higher in Etienne than it is in Singletary. I think, to me, the sort of average or median projection for when Singletary returns is at minimum a Bucky Irving level role for Tyrone Tracy, who's just shown them that he has enough juice. You can't put the Ferrari back in the garage, even if maybe you scale it back from 18 touches to 12.
Team that just really needs playmaking ability too, beyond Malik Neighbors, who hopefully is back from his concussion this week. And it could be a situation where Tyrone Tracy takes the touches lead, but then Devin Singletary still out there in the most critical snaps as the veteran, as the guy you trust in every situation. Just really, really good-looking setup, though, for Mr. Tyrone Tracy this week. Chad, every week viewer, wants to know if we dare to think Dare Ogunbowale has done enough to retain his passing game workload once Joe Mixon is back from his never-ending high ankle sprain, Kyle. Chad is without Aaron Jones for his annual injury, also on bye this week. CMC still not back either. He's worried about Jordan Mason. I don't know how worried I'd be about CMC, but I don't really see a ton of Dare Ogunbowale upside, do you? I think once Joe Mixon's back, he's the every down player, especially considering how ineffective this backfield has been. And Dare, talk about journeyman, is a true journeyman at this point, but do you have a different take, Kyle?
No, I totally agree. I mean, as much as Dare has given them something in this iteration of the backfield, yeah, Dare looks like he's got a little bit of juice out there when you get to compare him to Cam Akers, or, you know, maybe we'll get to compare him to Dameon Pierce at some point. But I think even Joe Mixon, who I've said is replacement level, especially at this point in his career, he's going to look like a guy you want to play every snap the moment he is fully healthy. I still think I included Dare on the waiver wire column, but pretty low on the list because he didn't I don't think he cleanly cemented himself as the better option over Akers. He was dreadfully inefficient in his own right. I don't think either of these guys are going to be super efficient on this offense. And we've seen them go through Akers before, and they'll probably, if they have to do this for another 2 or 3 weeks, you tell me they start 3 more weeks, Dare is not out carrying him in 3 consecutive weeks. Neither is Akers out carrying Dare for 3 consecutive weeks. It's kind of what happens when you have a bunch of guys who just aren't talented enough to cement themselves as the clear starter. It's going to be messy. And I still think Dare is worth an ad because I would pencil him in for a slight carries edge if Mixon doesn't play this week. But that's a lot of contingent. If Mixon doesn't play, I think maybe he gets the majority of the touches and he's not that good on them. So it's a very thin route to be threading when there are other options out there. Like Trey Sermon, I think just got over 50%. Rico Dowdle is just over 50%. And there are other interesting ads too. So I think he's low on the list, but maybe one you can win for a few bucks as a fab bid is maybe the sort of consolation prize.
It's not a horrible week at running back. And Dare is just, he's an emergency veteran committee guy. That's just all. Yes. There's no upside at all. Like the second anyone gets healthy, he's losing his touches. And these guys are all under 50% this week. Tank Bigsby, of course, Tyrone Tracy, Ty Chandler, who's on bye, so that kind of hurts. Braylon's still under 50. Justice Hill is still under 50. Rasheen Ali's back, but didn't get a touch yesterday. Tyler Algier still under 50. Jalen Wright still under 50. He's on bye. I think I like almost all of those guys as better ads than Dare. Just to be honest, even though if you only care about week 6 touches, then Dare is more in that picture. I will admit. So Nico Collins injures his hamstring. They called him day to day. Now they're calling him week to week. He played shockingly quickly last year after injuring his calf, but he did miss a game. It seems like maybe he's probably going to miss a game. It seems like Nico Collins. So Jay wants to know, if not now, then when for Mr. Tank Dell, who has only 13 catches all year, only 4 catches for 38 yards in his week 5 return. Can we be optimistic, Kyle, about Tank Dell in week 6 against the New England Patriots if Nico Collins is indeed out?
I mean, I think I agree with the premise of the question to set me up. If it was ever going to happen, it would be this week, especially with how they've used Stephon Diggs. He's not the one moving 10, 15, 20 yards downfield, moving the chains. They've been using him as an outlet, low ADOT kind of option. And Nico Collins has been probably the most efficient receiver beyond 10 yards downfield. He's good as a short intermediate target too, but really where he thrives is picking up chunk gains. And Tank Dell actually does that really well as well from the outside too. He doesn't profile physically as an outside guy, but that's where he wins. So not that he is even close to a 1-for-1 replacement, but if you have to say, how does this team pick up chunk gains? It's very clearly Tank Dell. And like this person says, without Nico, presumably week to week obviously sounds like not this week. If there was ever going to be a time, it would have to be now. Like they say, if not now, it's probably never, or at least unpredictably never. If it's not now, it'll show up in week 9, and we'll be like, wish we could have seen this coming, and we wouldn't have.
Yeah, got him. Tank, we know he's got it in him too. That's a really good thing about fill-in guys like Tank Dell, like when you've actually seen them do it before. So Tank, and two, the Patriots are a pass funnel, I believe, right?
I'd have to look.
They're a certain kind of funnel. Then they have the Packers in week 7. I can't remember if people either do they're all or nothing when they get the Patriots.
They would strike me as a run funnel because they can't score points.
Maybe that's true. That's my friend, by the way, Stevie, is taunting me. I changed my eliminator pick. I would have won the eliminator pool I was in had I stuck with the Green Bay Packers. I pivoted to the friggin' Seahawks. It was me and one other guy left. We both picked the Seahawks. I got eliminated, so we split the pot. I'm still happy. I don't think I've ever won an eliminator pool before.
I was going to say, this is so, I mean, I know this has been a really tough year for eliminators. That is so early, regardless of how big or small it is. But I know this has been an insane year for eliminators where they're getting chopped down at probably the fastest rate in like 5 or 10 years.
It was historically bad. Chad here with another question. Basically wondering, are there any veteran QB stashes that he can make? It must be a super flex or 2 QB where he desperately needs someone who's going to come into quarterback snap soon. Kyle, I'm in several super flex leagues where there's just no one available. Do we have anyone who comes to mind as a quarterback who might see some snaps soon? It appears that he's in Tyler Huntley hell right now. I mean, Jameis is really the only obvious one who comes to mind. Mason Rudolph, I will say, for the Tennessee Titans is probably a fairly safe one who he's going to see snaps at some point. I mean, right?
Yeah, exactly. Will Levis, even if he ends up playing this week, it's a very tenuous grip in the starter role, especially not like, the spreadsheets don't care if your pick six is hilarious or not. But I do think coaches care that your bad plays are viscerally bad for the most part. So I do think it just continues to shorten leash on him. So I actually think you came up with the best one. I don't have a better answer.
I just scanned through the entire league, and I think that's really the only one that's going to happen anytime soon. I would say maybe with the Rams, Jimmy Garoppolo. Matthew Stafford's already really banged up. The season's over for the Rams. They're 1-4. Or if he suffers another injury anytime soon, he might actually miss some time. So Jimmy's probably not a terrible stash. The only guy I see you can reasonably maybe count on seeing in October would be Mason Rudolph with the Tennessee Titans.
The next closest would be like Drew Lock, but the Giants are 2-3, and Daniel Jones has been he's been bad, but he hasn't been completely fall on his face bad. Just kind of your run of the mill Daniel Jones bad. So I think you got the best answer. You got it pretty quickly too.
By the way, get in your questions. We don't have a ton of questions yet right now, actually. It's in a kind of unusual situation. So if you got questions, feel free to get them in. Cap for Life wants to know, by the way, about this won't be terribly useful for Tuesday podcast listeners. He's up by 35 points on Monday evening. His opponent has Kelsey, Hunt, and KC defense. Do I win? I'd say he'd probably lose, just to be honest.
No way. I mean, 35, I'm going to guess Kelsey, even if we call it full PPR, Kelsey probably projects for 15, which is really high for a tight end.
Kelsey and Hunt have two, I think, easy of a path to 15 apiece, is what I would say.
That's a good point. I guess I would say they probably more project for like 15, 13, and KC defense 7, 8, 9, which still leaves you 5 or 6 points ahead. So I'd give you like a 58.43% chance of winning. Honestly, maybe a little higher, but you make a good point that like Kelsey and Hunt close the gap somewhat quickly. I put you as a slight favorite though.
Camden Christian has a question. First off, he says, what's up with the Aaron Jones injury? Then he's wondering if a trade, will we send Etienne and Alec Pierce for Aaron Jones as an upgrade? I guess he wants Aaron Jones. He's tired of being on the Travis Etienne carousel. Aaron Jones, now has a hip injury. They're on bye this week. So it's not an upgrade for this week, and we don't even know if it's an upgrade for week 7, Kyle. Would you make this trade? Someone trying to get out from underneath their Etienne bags. But a fairly risky trade for a guy, last year when he hurt his hamstring, it was a while. It took a long time to heal. What would you say about this trade offer for Camden?
Yeah, it's like if you've been frustrated with I thought I had an explosive running back and now we're not getting fantasy production from him play, Aaron Jones isn't going to feel any better. I think he is clearly a better player at producing big plays, but at least Etienne, he's been relatively healthy outside of obviously missing his entire first season. He's been healthy since then, where Aaron Jones is the opposite. When he's on the field, I think he's really good, but he is just on the field and at 100% well on the field, decreasingly. So you're not going to get any less frustration by making this trade. I think you could probably shoot for a lot higher in terms of flipping Etienne, not because I think he's still some great asset. I think his value is decreasing, but Aaron Jones is heading in the same direction for different reasons.
Yeah, you just got to get someone you at least know is playing. That's just a little too much volatility. You're trading volatility for maybe even more volatility, because the one thing we know for Etienne, despite banging a shoulder again, they claim that's why he wasn't playing in the fourth quarter. Is healthy and will be active week 6. Stevie, that was a rare earnest question. I was wondering if Darius Slayton is startable when Malik Neighbors is active. And is the Wandale PPR scam over? The Wandale PPR scam left some people wanting in week 5, Kyle. Darius Slayton, every time he plays, does this. Like literally every time he gets a chance, like this has.
He's deep threat Greg Dortch. These guys never play, and then the moment that their team calls upon them, they're like, "Yeah, I'm good for 80." What's your question?
I know.
And he got more. I think he got over 100 with a touchdown.
8 for 122 and a touchdown. I'll never forget a Darius Slayton box score. I remember all of them.
All right, Pat. Week 3 of the 2020. No, just kidding. I mean, Robinson got 9 targets. I guess he maybe didn't have that good of a stat line, but
he did.
This is the PPR scam. Oh no, this is a perfectly fine stat line.
Well, perfectly fine PPR stat line. He did get without the touchdown, it would have been close to useless, even in PPR, under 10 points.
No, 10 points on the dot. You missed his 4 rushing yards looking at his box score. 10 points on the dot in PPR. This is the scam you folks signed up for. I don't know what you thought you were getting, buddy. You're not getting 60 yards. You're not getting big plays. 6 catches is what you signed up for. If you don't play in a full PPR league, don't get on the Wan'Dale Robinson ride.
So Wan'Dale, yeah. So first off, Slayton, it's not going to happen, unfortunately. When Malik Nabers comes back, and now they probably won't even trade him now that they've already had to dip into their depth and remind themselves how Darius Slayton is valuable to them. He's someone they absolutely should be trading, but I think that became a lot less likely when they saw, yeah, he's still good. Like when we need a starter in a pinch, he's going to contribute for us, unless you're going to give us like a 2nd round pick, which of course no one is going to do. Probably no one will even give them a 3rd round pick for Darius Slayton.
5th would have been my guess.
Yeah, otherwise he would have already been traded if he could get a 3rd round pick.
Yep.
And I don't think the Wan'Dale scam is over just because he was perfectly fine scamming when Nabers was healthy. And this is just like all they got is just loading up targets to these 2 guys. I don't think Theo Johnson will be a thing once Nabers is back. Slayton maybe earned himself like a few more looks, but it's just not going to be enough. Not going to be enough to really make noise with Malik Nabers back in life. Jay here. Another question. Are we keeping at it with Dontavian Wicks? There's only 26 attempts for Jordan Love in week 5. So that was part of the problem. He did at least command 7 targets on that. But we kind of got some fears coming to life with the Packers where I was like, I don't know, man. He didn't look healthy in week 4, Jordan Love. They had so much success running the ball in weeks 3 and 4. I kind of thought they were going to stay more run heavy. They did. It wasn't effective. But are we worried at all about that? Like maybe them remaining stubbornly run heavy for now. And of course, Romeo Doubs appears he's coming off suspension in week 7 against the Cardinals. How comfortable are you running it back with Dontavian Wicks, Kyle?
I mean, he did everything except score the fantasy points. He had 25% target share, nearly like a 15-8 on. And Jordan Love is a guy who, if you tell me, ironically, Slayton actually gets there. But if you tell me Daniel Jones' deep threat had a bunch of air yards, I'm like, it's not always going to matter. He's Daniel Jones. Jordan Love's pretty good at football. I mean, maybe the argument is now that he just can't throw the deep ball because he's banged up, but we also saw a freaking awesome Jayden Reed play that we were so close to getting in the end zone. Instead, we get a very meh Jayden Reed performance, but he still looked good on the deep ball there. So I'm going to say if we're getting a very reasonable target share at a high clip of air yards from a good quarterback, I'm going back to the well. And I think it's fair to say he is going to be a high variance play because he is just commanding what, the type of targets Denny hates, these 15-8 odd targets. And they're frustrating. To Denny's point, they are frustrating, especially when it's all you get. And that probably is all Dontavian Wicks is going to get. But given that most people are probably starting him as a wide receiver 3 or flex, and you're getting 3 or 4 or more deep shots from Jordan Love every week, I'll go back to the well, and I won't be shocked if, I get burned again.
Yeah, I just said adjust expectations for Dontavian Wicks. We got too excited forcing him into the top 24, basically. I had him as a wide receiver 23 for week 5. You just have to view him like a volatile flex option, basically.
Yeah.
Someone who can flip a matchup, but also just might, it could be, 72 minutes into the game, it's just like very clear he's not going to do anything for your team that day. Like, well, wish I hadn't done that. He's just that kind of player. You got to stay realistic with Dontavian Wicks. Kevin Shea is wondering, is it time to drop Amari Cooper or maybe hope that he gets traded before the month is through? There's still so many games to go before the trade deadline. It seems so close. It's only 24 days. There's at least 3 more games. I don't know how long people can wait. Target totals for Amari Cooper are 9, 8, 12, 8, and 10. A little hard to drop a guy commanding that kind of usage. I mean, Deshaun Watson is yet to go over 5.5 yards per attempt in a game this season. We know there's just one crazy, awful Deshaun Watson stat after another. Can you tell people? I can't really tell people to drop Amari Cooper, but what are you telling people about Amari Cooper, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I can't either. Guys who get the ball that often, or at least guys who have the ball thrown to them that often, are typically the ones that give us the most fantasy points. And even we see this with Deshaun Watson's like literally the worst starting quarterback in the NFL right now. But you know who put up really good numbers with Bryce Young, who was last year's worst quarterback in the NFL? Adam freaking Thielen. And he was 1 year removed from being complete dust. And that's not to say he obviously got better. And frankly, Watson was like at least as bad as Bryce Young was last year. They're both hanging out at the bottom of the chart. Like, oh man, you have a long gap between them and the next cohort of players. But Adam Thielen wasn't a superstar. He was really, like I said, on the back nine of his career. And the fact that his quarterback saw, as soon as the ball hit his hands, he went, where is Adam Thielen? That got Adam Thielen a lot of fantasy points. I think over the long run, even with Deshaun Watson, it would also be the case for Amari Cooper. And I think like you, are still holding out hope that Jameis Winston plays. And frankly, every week I get that the team really has no incentive over the long run to play Jameis. I assume he's just like on a 1-year deal, and they're tied financially to Watson either for more years than they'd like or for a sickening, like record-setting dead cap hit. So I get the long-term interest is to make him work. But these guys have jobs to keep. Like Stefanski probably doesn't make it to the next regime if they either don't rebound sans Watson or they leave Watson in and he just continues to be terrible. So I still think every week we get closer to a Jameis Winston sighting. I mean, we technically got it last week. It's just a matter of they are really holding out. I don't think they can hold out forever. And so either Watson or Cooper probably rebounds just based on the simple target math, or he really rebounds based on the quarterback change math.
One problem, because the dynamics you just laid out, like jobs are on the line. I don't think they'll probably trade Amari Cooper. Like this is not a team that's going to suddenly start playing for tomorrow, because tomorrow is still this fully guaranteed.
Tomorrow looks as awful as it is today.
So I don't really think they'll end up trading him, even though they should. This has become a teardown, I would say. But I mean, the profile, like even in this sorry situation, he's going to regress to the mean. You cannot keep commanding 8 targets every week and just not producing at all. I have great fears about this matchup against Vic Fangio this weekend on the road. It seemed like this could be like 8 or 9 sacks for Deshaun Watson. But then back-to-back weeks is the Bengals and the Ravens, 2 pass defenses that have been utterly atrocious. The Ravens, everyone thought had turned the corner because they locked up Josh Allen 2 weeks ago. It turns out it's just the Bills are that dysfunctional right now. If Amari doesn't put up at least one huge stat line against the Bengals or Ravens, then you might be talking about dropping him, because it's just not going to happen, because those are the 2 games where it has to happen. But we are not dropping Amari Cooper yet. Mr. Thakrar, sorry, cannot struggling with that name there. Trading Chris Olave for Garrett Wilson straight up. He is receiving Garrett Wilson. I think I have a side I clearly prefer in this deal, but what do you prefer, Kyle?
Yeah, I think it's Garrett Wilson. Like I prefer.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, I do.
That's fine with me. Look, I felt very uncomfortable saying, oh, well, Garrett Wilson had 1 good week. It's time to go back to him. But he was also dominating the targets for that team. I mean, he was like Amari Cooper adjacent, where it's like he has to, the math says his score line has to catch up with his target totals, his target shares, all the nerd stuff, all the volume stuff. And it did last week. But I'm down to hear the Olave pitch, because I also I thought about it at first.
Well, it's just similar overall target totals, and I just feel like there's more explosive play potential on the ones Olave is getting than the ones Garrett Wilson is getting. Just their blocking is so bad that they're so focused on this quick passing game. It's like, how is Garrett Wilson supposed to get any downfield production? Whereas Olave has been getting some downfield production finally recently. Been getting really strong target totals all season. He's the only guy that they have that's not a role player on the Saints, like someone who can really be like the featured guy. Everyone else is kind of like a role player adjacent. Where I just feel like
the Jets have Allen Lazard. They kind of have that wide receiver 1 role locked up.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, plus 2, I mean, let's be real. I mean, there's a pretty good chance 48 hours Devontae Adams is on the Jets. Like that's genuinely, a huge problem.
It does feel extreme. Like
he's been connected to the Saints also, for what it's worth.
But
it feels like he's going to be on the Jets in a few days.
Mm-hmm.
So I would at least wait and see with Garrett Wilson before maybe acquiring him to see who his teammates are before making it. But but there's definitely room for disagreement here. I mean, 22 targets is a lot of targets.
I think I saw somewhere it's like the fewest yards ever for a 22 target performance.
Well, since over the past 15 years, with the other one being Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, that's right. Good memory on that. And I mean, that does speak to your point of we're not really getting explosive play opportunities for Garrett Wilson. It's purely he's our clear wide receiver 1. Let's pump him full of volume. And his per team pass attempt, his share type stuff looks better than Chris Olave's. But this Saints offense, even as it goes through its low points, still has the opportunity to make giant plays where you watch the Jets and it's a struggle to really string together a drive, because you need to hit 5 yards every single time because you're not hitting 20.
Jay, question here. How do we feel about Tucker Kraft rest of the season? You called him like the slappy week 5 chalk that, of course, hit. I don't know if you said that. Might have been Denny that said that, of course. He was a very popular
I don't
DFS
think it was me,
play.
but it checks out.
He was a very, very popular DFS play who, unlike Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, did hit. He's had a really good 2 weeks. One guy at tight end who's like actually producing and like exceeding expectations. How do we feel about him rest of season in a skill core that's just very deep and an offense that maybe is having a bit of an identity crisis right now just because Jordan Love has not been able to establish any momentum this season? How do you feel about Tucker Kraft rest of season?
Yeah, I feel really strongly. I still have a lot of faith in the Packers being a good passing attack. I mean, it's one where you look at Jordan Love, and even though he's had his struggles, he's taken his lumps this year. Physically, he has all the tools, and he's put it together many times. He's not one of the guys where you're like, oh, he has all the tools. Why isn't he getting there? He gets there pretty often. So I'm actually going to say I feel pretty good about Tucker Kraft. That also speaks to the tight end landscape where a guy drafted as the tight end 29, I'm like, lock him into the top 10 already after 5 weeks. But frankly, he's a guy who gets volume on a passing attack that I think is pretty good. Whereas Dalton Kincaid, his volume has upticked a lot lately. The first few weeks, it was a mix of not getting targeted much and only getting targets at the line of scrimmage. We're seeing a lot of growth in how the team is using him. They're also not passing the ball very often and frankly aren't the best at passing the football right now. Like, who do you project for more passing yards per game from here to the end of the season? I think it's the Packers, right? Packers
than who? Sorry, who's the second team?
We're talking about Kincaid here. So the
yeah, definitely still the Packers. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The Bills too. I mean, they're going to get this fixed. I just worry about there's so many mouths to feed for the Packers. Like there's so many target commanders for the Packers.
Yeah, they have good ball players over there.
Like not just guys who are like fighting for looks, but who have actually commanded.
Yeah, the Bills have just guys who are fighting for looks. You know who's fighting for looks? Matt Collins is out there fighting for looks. But if Kincaid is good, he will easily dust those guys. And in terms of like the share of the passing attack he's seen, it's uptick a lot lately. Like he is sort of becoming that pseudo wide receiver one, especially without Khalil Shakir. But I just like don't know if he's good.
No, I know. I do not know either. I think the answer is probably no, but we'll find out. I was zoned out earlier because I was trying to comprehend what was a fairly complex question here from Cade, who basically has a loaded team, but he's 1-3. He desperately needs a kicker this week. He has a follow-up that says he could not make a 2-for-1 trade happen to clear a roster spot. Do you see anyone from this large group of players? Who is more, by the way? Brown?
Got to be DJ.
Yeah, Brown, London, DJ Moore, Higgins, Waddle, J-Mo, Deontay, and BTJ, Saquon, Dobbins, Chubb. I think if you're going to drop someone, it's probably going to be Jonathan Brooks, which you don't want to do that, but he's the one guy who has not played football this year. Chuba Hubbard has been remaining a bright spot for the Panthers.
Chubb, if you're talking about guys who haven't played football this year, who enters a worse situation? Jonathan Brooks, where his quarterback is Andy Dalton, and that's somehow the good thing, or Nick Chubb, where you're praying his quarterback is Jameis Winston. I mean, they're very similar archetypes. Honestly, I think mine's Nick Chubb, but for the same reasons you laid out for Brooks.
Yeah, Chubb, I guess. I think Chubb will at least be greeted as a potential savior, whereas Brooks could just be treated as a change of pace guy.
Yeah.
That's where we would start, though, Cade. We would drop one of those 2 running backs. Ram N wants to know Tank or Tyrone Tracy rest of season. I guess Tank Bigsby or Tyrone Tracy. Who would you rather depend on as we hit the 1/3 mark of the 2024 campaign, Kyle?
Tyrone Tracy. I just think he has more chances to lead his backfield and carries. I think his team is more likely to just straight up say you're the starter now versus Tank Bigsby, who's been incredible. He just, frankly, he's played like he deserves to be the starter. But one of them is fighting with a perfectly fine but perfectly replaceable Devin Singletary, who was not drafted by this regime, paid well, to be fair. Just strikes me as a guy who can be replaced. Travis Etienne is playing actually fine. He hasn't been terrible by any means. And they've invested, I would say, still more in him. I'm going to say Tyrone Tracy. And also he's more likely to score points in week 6, which for right now, that's what we're focused on. So he's getting more points now. And I think he's also getting more points later.
Makes sense to me. Raul has a question here. He's wondering who he should start, a wide receiver 3 next week. His Wicks bags are down very bad. So I guess Wicks, Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette. He got cute and traded Zay for Kelsey before Rice went down.
Worked out.
Sorry about that. I would probably stick with Wicks as my wide receiver 3 in this situation. I would not be trying to jam in Keon Coleman or Xavier Legette over Dontavian Wicks right now. Correct, Kyle?
Correct. Yep. Totally with you.
Chad here. I would say the answer here is no, Chad. He's wondering if Bo Nix is in solid QB2 territory. Do I think there's room for him to improve as the offensive scheme kind of grows? They're kind of opening things up a little bit. He had a 3-touchdown game yesterday, in a really easy Broncos victory. So, like, where's the ceiling supposed to come from when the offensive weapons are this limited, Kyle? I will say, like, a boomer narrative take is, like the sideline shouting match Nix and Sean Payton got into on Sunday. I bet Sean Payton honestly was probably into that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely he was, for sure.
Taking control of the team.
He's got fire, baby. He's got fire in his gut.
So I could see them maybe opening up the playbook more. He has been earning opening up the playbook more. The problem is, it's just kind of like, what do you even get when this Broncos playbook is open more? Because the weapons are so ridiculously bad.
Yeah, he's in like a QB2. Oh, I don't feel good, but he's my QB2 territory. Yeah, it's like 24 quarterbacks. That is a very large portion of the starting quarterbacks. So QB2, if you extend that all the way to literally the top 24 quarterbacks, doesn't say a lot. He is on pace for 400 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. The touchdowns are probably a little bit less than sticky, but he was a really good rushing quarterback in college. I would project the yards to be relatively sticky. So I mean, I definitely think he is solid. Sounds more like top 15 to top 20. He's more fringe QB2. But there are some pretty bad quarterback players out there right now, and he's rushing, which is kind of a cheat code to at least sneak into the top 24.
So Bo Nix, too, has this shown enough? I would say I'm not going to consider him a solid QB2. He has shown enough in like a super flex or a 2 QB. Like if he was available or something, like, do I need to stash him on my bench just to protect myself with quarterback touches? Then yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because like I was in a league where my third QB, our redraft league that we're in, Kyle, the best I could do was Gardner Minshew. And like all season, I've been hunting for like a QB3 upgrade, and as no one has become available. And of course, now he's been benched or going to be benched probably. So Bo Nix has reached like, which of course, there's very few leagues where Bo Nix is probably available if it's a super flex or 2 QB. He's got to be rostered. Solid QB2 seems like a stretch right now. Questions on a trade. They receive Marvin Harrison Jr. and give up Rashee Rice, a dynasty trade. Give up Rashee Rice, Allen Lazard, and a 2025 first rounder. What do you think about this? Getting Marv for an injured asset, a non-entity, like a throw in Allen Lazard, and a 2025 first rounder, Kyle.
Yeah, I'd probably take that. And it sucks because I have Rashee Rice everywhere, including my favorite dynasty league. I'm still projecting him to not play this year. There's some conversation that he could be out just like 6 to 8 weeks, but we do have a suspension looming, and we still could have a full ACL tear recovery looming. That's not good for a receiver's development when he is 1 year plus 4 games into his career. Allen Lazard, I don't care how many touchdowns he can score. You'll never convince me.
Lazard is like immaterial to the trade. I'm assuming this is probably just making roster spots work, or maybe they desperately need some touches right now. But immaterial there. It's basically, would you trade Marv for Rashee Rice in the 2025 first rounder? I would say, and I would say yes. I would want
assuming
Marv.
Assuming that 2025, just peg it at 6 or 7, like right in the middle. If it's really high, maybe not. Like if it's the 101. This is going to be such an insanely valuable 101, especially for coming off of a sort of an incredibly weak running back class. Gianti at the 101 is going to be a breath of fresh air given what we got this past season. But assuming this is 6 or 7, Rice in the 106 for Marv, I'd take Marv.
Well, also too, I mean, Marv, it's been a slow start. It hasn't been that slow. And it was the best receiver prospect in a while, since at least Jamar Chase, since maybe Amari Cooper, since maybe Julio Jones. If you can receive that for an injured guy and a first round pick, that's pretty good overall value for you. We've been wondering, that we need to end the Wan'Dale scam. Are we selling high on Wan'Dale? He probably is a pretty sensible sell high, actually. What do you think, Kyle?
Can we get one of the fun running backs like a Tank Bigsby, a Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, who's coming off? Maybe Bucky Irving's a good one. He's coming off of a disappointing game, and he cost them a bit. Was it the game? Was it late in the game? A fumble? Would you say that cost him the game?
There was a lot of things that cost that game. But
I didn't feel fair to throw it all on him, but you get the territory I'm stepping in. Maybe Bucky Irving's a good target because Wan'Dale, if you're not starting him and you're not desperately in need of a wide receiver 3-4, not really sure what he brings to your roster. He doesn't bring upside either on a weekly basis or on a, he could be a breakout star type of basis. Whereas Bucky Irving or Tank Bigsby or Tyrone Tracy, these guys we're talking about, they could be that next sort of star, especially down the stretch. So maybe one of those type of players.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head for like the absolute best case outcome for trading Wan'Dale is a running back with question marks, basically. So you're not going to trade him for another receiver. You're trading for a guy you're hoping is coming into more value that the manager isn't really sold on their value yet. So selling high on Wan'Dale, you're still not even, it's not even like you're selling that high. Because there's only so valuable that asset is going to be in Wan'Dale. And he's a sell high in that. I mean, this is his ceiling. Like 7 catches for like 74 yards. Like that's like a really, really strong Wan'Dale Robinson week. Like that's a usable PPR week, of course. Like there's not more meat on that bone though. Like he's already at his absolute peak. So by like the letter of the law, he's like a dictionary definition, sell high. Lindorfin's wondering, can this team win? Oh, this is team good, Kyle. Let's tell Lindorf.
Is this team
here every week? Sorry, Lindorf. This is a very long question, though. That's a longtime viewer of the show as well. Mason, Kyron, Walker, Najee. Might need another running back. Lindorfins is what I would tell you. A receiver depth, pretty good. Tight end tandem needs some work.
Wait, was that an earnest? You might need another running back with Jordan Mason, Kyron Williams, and Ken Walker. We can write out.
Yeah, because Mason could lose his job. Kyron's a huge injury risk. Najee's not producing. Kenneth Walker is a huge injury risk. I feel like running back could. It doesn't look like a problem right now. That looks like a position group that could become a problem to me pretty quickly. And of course, tight end is a big problem. David Njoku now is on as many MRIs as he has games appeared in this season. And we don't know when TJ Hawkinson is coming back. So it's a good running back group.
I feel pretty good about the Kyron Mason combo. Kyron, I don't care about the injury risk. Every running back has injury risk. He's doing fine so far. Mason, very much like could be incredibly frustrating to ride him to the playoffs and then have a 0. But I have zero faith in CMC coming back anytime soon. Like, honestly, the 49ers are good enough. I mean, I guess they just lost the Cardinals, though. They probably don't lose it.
They're bad.
Yeah, maybe they're just bad. But I think, especially regular season, they're a team that should be good enough in the regular season that once they lock up like a high playoff spot, which maybe they never do, I'm immediately like, all right, CMC, we'll see you in the wild card round, because once they secure their playoff spot, why bring him back?
I will say 2 and 3, they're in a position where they're probably going to be fighting the whole year, the 49ers. Yeah. So we might not get Golden State Warriors mode from the San Francisco 49ers this year. Mark is wondering about trading Justin Jefferson and Bucky Irving for Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, and Joe Mixon. I've got a pretty easy answer here, Kyle. What is your answer, though?
I mean, it has to be yes. It
has to be yes?
I mean,
you're trading the best receiver in fantasy for 3 injured guys?
I don't think JJ is the best receiver in fantasy.
Yeah, he is too. Like we've seen, like this is his absolute floor. Like 6 catches for 80 yards every week. That's pretty amazing.
No, he's great. Look, he's great. I don't want to.
Bucky Irving is also. There are only 2 healthy guys in this deal, and Mark has both of them. I'm not. That's injury optimism tends to run aground very quickly in fantasy football, I would say.
Yeah,
Tyreek's not injured, by the way. I meant like question marks though with Tyreek.
Yeah, Tyreek's useless until his quarterback comes back. But like, I do think there's a scenario in which, I mean,
we don't even know for sure if Tua's coming back in week 8. We think he is.
Correct.
We don't know that for sure.
Correct. Let's say Cooper Kupp comes back. They have a bye, so let's say he comes back. Even call it week 8, and then Tua comes back in week 8. Both of those guys probably project to score very similarly to JJ, especially with this damn Brian Flores defense. I swear to God, he's taking one of the greatest seasons ever away from us.
Vikings getting good has been a catastrophic development.
Oh my God, it hurts my bones so much because Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the NFL. I have no doubt about that. But his fantasy profile is a bit more frustrating compared to his talent because they just don't need to do all that much all the time. Whereas like that's not going to be true of Cooper Kupp. He had 20 something targets in week 2 or whatever. So I would actually take the Tyreek Kupp side because I think those guys are easily giving you, like the combination of the two are easily giving you more than Justin Jefferson once they get back. I get
it's just like 2 more weeks, like of this Tyreek, one of which is a bye. I don't know, man. Like I don't really, honestly, I don't really like planning that far ahead in redraft fantasy football. Things change so unbelievably quickly. Like I'm not trying to be funny. Like this isn't going to happen. We could get an announcement next week that Tua is retiring. Like that's probably not going to happen, of course. But like it's just a lot of optimism. I would say.
No. I your point is taken that like, oh, we always, because someone said Tua might return in week 8, we've penciled Tyreek in as the wide receiver 1 overall starting week 8 going forward. But so many times that like, there's only one way this breaks. Tua doesn't come back tomorrow. Like there's just only so many ways this breaks, and more of them are bad than are week 8. And the same is like true for Cooper Kupp. They don't play next week. He's not coming back next week. He's maybe coming back the week after that.
Seems like he's probably coming back a week.
He's probably coming back the week after that. But like, that's we're penciling him in as if he's locked into week 7 wide receiver 1 production going forward. And we just don't know that to be true for sure. And there was 100% for a guy like Kupp and a guy like Mixon. This is like almost certainly true. They're more likely to get hurt going forward as a measure of re-injury than Justin Jefferson, who is not currently hurt. So I still think I'm just taking the shot on getting 2 wide receiver 1s and a running back 1.
I think, what I would boil this down to is by far the most valuable asset in this deal is Justin Jefferson. But there is, I guess, more overall value on side 2. Just a lot more risk. So this is kind of, he's probably only making this trade because he needs more upside. He needs more bodies. From that perspective, it is probably.
To say also, what's your record? If you're 1-4, like assuming you lose tonight, you cannot wait. You just cannot wait. Honestly, even if you're 2-3, I'd say at 3-2 and forward is where I think there's more value on side 2. Wins out at 2-3 and less. You just have to keep getting wins on the board.
Danny here is wondering, so we can't tell people to drop Najee Harris. We're not dropping Najee Harris, but
I could
just tell people what is our Najee Harris spiel right now, because this was his time to shine. Jaylen Warren injured. This has been his season to shine, supposedly, with Arthur Smith, and he's just doing nothing but the sort. Really soft Cowboys run defense last night. Remained stuck in neutral. He hasn't scored a touchdown all year. Are there any reasons for hope for Najee Harris? Is he just purely a volume bet at this point? Because you can't drop this kind of volume. You just straight up can't drop it.
Yeah, I told people that Dario Kunbawale. I can't be like, we should drop Najee. I want to be clear. I want to tell people to drop him. But no, to your point, he's still seeing, as far as the backfield goes, nearly all of the work. Jaylen Warren, as much as I love Jaylen Warren, I don't know at what point he returns. And I'm positive, understandably so, that they would not give him a large role. We saw this in week 1. They were very hesitant to give him a role coming off the hamstring injury, coming off multiple injuries. It's not going to get any better. Cordero Patterson is like the oldest running back in the NFL and is hurt. He's going to get all of the work. And that's all you can ask for a lot of running backs right now. That's also all I can offer you, because I don't think he's really that good.
Well, the thing you can offer people too is, like, as bad as Najee Harris is, and he's been this year, like, there's going to be touchdown regression probably rather severely soon. Like, it's totally absurd and unlucky that he has 0 touchdowns. Think of all the bad running backs that have like 3 or 4 touchdowns already this year. Like, Najee will get touchdowns at least. I think that's the one thing you can count on. You cannot drop Najee, unfortunately. Thomas Healy, is Bijan tradable? It's a dynasty league where he has J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving on his team. I know Thomas is in dynasty league. Let's just talk about redraft, though, where most people are going to be wondering about Bijan Robinson. He's a hot button player right now. Optimism or pessimism going forward in Bijan, Kyle?
Yeah, they get the Panthers this week. The windows, I mean, it'll be maybe only 1 week. Maybe we go back to Algier, frustrating us tremendously. But the Panthers, I believe, give up more carries and more running back targets than almost any other team. That's what bad teams do, is the opponents run on them a lot. And we know that that's how the Falcons want to play football. If the Panthers drag them into a shootout, they'll probably go along for the ride. But this looks like, if you want to buy Bijan, especially in Dynasty, which is a more long-term outlook, but even in redraft, if you want to buy him, this looks like the ultimate this upcoming week. This time it counts. I know it hasn't counted. I've said it counts a lot, but it really didn't count those times. This time, as favorites versus a bad Panthers team, I swear to God, it counts.
And so the Algier thing is getting overstated a little. It's still been a pretty commanding snaps and touches advantage for Bijan. I think so. Teams, when they tend to do something so dumb that everyone is noticing it and tweeting about it. In this case, it's not really the timeshare itself, but like literally only using Bijan on the outside zone runs. I feel like the Falcons are probably going to come out of their week 5 film review and be like, yeah, we're getting really one-dimensional with Bijan. Like, he's too good to only be doing like literally only outside zone runs. We got to get Bijan more involved and be more creative. I think that's a reasonable hope going forward with Bijan. Tyler Algier had been popping in the efficiency metrics. That came back down to earth big time with the bigger role in week 5. We've probably already weathered the worst with Bijan, and Bijan cost me my season. But yeah, I think we've probably already weathered the worst of Bijan. Kevin Thomas here, real quick. Just basically wants to know what kind of Jonathan Brooks optimism can we have now that Chuba Hubbard has had 3 really good games since Andy Dalton has become the Panthers' starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I do think to this person's point is that the way Chuba Hubbard has played, and frankly, the way the team talked about him, like all throughout the offseason, they were like, he sets the tone for the team. He's a great leader for the team. And I know this stuff doesn't seem like it matters, but when it comes to a player who is playing well, retaining a role over a rookie, I do think that like we should factor in the team, like George Pickens. If they had another player, they don't have other players who can play over him, and they still play over him. They have no one within a tenth of his talent, and they still take him off the field because he's frustrating to coach, is putting it kindly. Players who are good to coach and good at football probably retain their roles longer. So I do think it's at best you're hoping for splash play, and although it's getting to be a banged up offensive line, it's overall been a good offensive line that opened up a really good hole. It's how Chuba broke a 38-yarder for the second week in a row as well. This one was a touchdown. I think you're hoping that the young explosive running back does that thing young explosive running backs do, and they immediately make a lot of plays on fewer than expected touches, sort of like Bucky Irving or what we're getting with now Tyrone Tracy. And that role grows. But am I playing him in my lineup in his first week back, whenever that happens to be? Probably not. I'm still projecting Chuba to see a ton of work in that game. But after that, and after that, and after that, I think his role will still grow. I still don't feel like I'm cutting him after seeing how Chuba has played, even if I don't have an IR spot.
Real quick, we'll keep this really brief. But this trade, so the trade is he got offered A.J. Brown and Jonathan Brooks for Jonathan Taylor and Odunze. I think even with the Brooks question marks, you just have to take that. I'm abiding by my best player in the principal deal here, and it's clearly A.J. Brown right now with Jonathan Taylor back in high ankle hell. A.J. Brown is apparently back this week. The Taylor thing, man, the guy cannot stay healthy anymore. It's quite a shame. Brett Lasser wondering about Blake Corum. Are we stashing him over someone like a tight end 2, like Colby Parkinson, which that's a pretty good comparison for like the players you should be. That's the company Blake Corum is keeping on the end of your bench, basically. He was involved for the second time this season yesterday, still only 5 carries. Kyron Williams holding up under major workload so far, but is Blake Corum maybe someone who will have more work in the second half of the season, either via a Kyron injury or just the Rams not having pass catchers and having to rely more on the running game?
I was going to say, I mean, you quite literally cannot have less work. He's had work in non-garbage time in one game. I mean, his first game where he saw a few carries, they were down by like 30. And it was the final drive. It was the final drive where he saw, I think, 8 consecutive rush attempts. They were sort of meaningless in projecting things going forward. This more recent one is something. It's a very small something. And you have correctly pegged the type of deep roster stash that he holds company with, like you said. But I would still take him over a guy like Colby Parkinson. The Rams don't play next week, so it's kind of an easy one to point out. But whatever tight end it is, if it's Tyler Conklin, it's Cade Otton, Jonnu Smith or whatever, whichever guy who is a tight end or maybe a deep stash wide receiver 5-6, unless he's making your lineup in this week, I would rather hold Blake Corum because you can find Colby Parkinson's. I know he saw like 13 targets. I don't care.
Yeah, curious.
Look, Cooper Kupp is coming back the next time this team takes the football field, and Colby Parkinson will almost never be in our lineups again. You can find these types of players with a relatively high frequency. For as little as Blake Corum has done, I still think he projects for an insane workload if anything happens to Kyron. And that's not a player you can find on the waiver wire very often. So I'm stashing a guy like Corum over a tight end 2 or a wide receiver 5.
Keeping players like that is so tedious until it's the most amazing thing ever.
Yes.
Like I had Tank Bigsby just appear on my bench this week. He'd been sitting there for a while. Then I had like a bunch of injuries, and I was like, "Wow, I'm so glad I've been holding Tank Bigsby." And that's kind of
Tracy was that for
exactly
that for me on a bunch of teams where like he's scoring 0 points. I've never considered playing him, and now he is the linchpin to my fantasy season continuing.
It was a 14-team league also, but like the week before Taylor got hurt, there was just no one available. I'm like, whatever, man. I'm going to add Trey Sermon to see what happens. He immediately materialized into a starter, so it's tedious until it's not. Lane Harden is wondering, Wicks or your guy, 2 Zoomer All-Stars, Dontavian Wicks or Ladd McConkey, Kyle? Who would you rather have on your bench going for the Chargers coming off by this week?
Oh, that's a good question. I think
I'm saying Ladd season.
Okay, no, go for it.
Well,
no,
it's tough.
I needed someone to convince me of the answer I wanted to say, so you do it, please.
Well, it's just because Ladd, less compelling target competition, had really kind of started to pop every week. To someone they really need, the Packers need Dontavian Wicks. They don't need Wicks the way the Chargers need Ladd McConkey. I feel like better draft capital for Ladd McConkey. Of course, apples to oranges since Ladd's a rookie and Wicks is a sophomore. But even in that really frustrating Chargers offense, I think there's probably more runway for upside with Ladd than there is with Wicks. But it's the reason he's asking is because it's hard, and it's a really hard question. And I would not say keeping Wicks over Ladd would be insane.
I mean, you weren't kidding about Ladd coming on. Coming on as in getting a large share of a whatever passing attack, but like I still hold that we should want to get 30% of Justin Herbert's targets. And he got that 2 games ago. He got 27% last game, which was 2 weeks ago. You know, like you said, I still think we want to be targeting a guy who can clearly dominate his team's targets. You're right about Ladd. I was afraid to say it, but you're right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, oh man, I really was, but you think it's probably kind of dumb. The other guy, like, I'm gonna have the courage to say Ladd. And then, we are almost out of time, by the way. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm going to get to 1 or 2 more here. Guys really stepped up with the questions. Johnny Talbot is wondering about trading Steph Diggs and Zay Flowers for AJ Brown. Should he get more, or is this fair? To me, this is like trade 101. Like, turn 2 guys that you don't love having into someone that you're going to absolutely love starting in AJ Brown. But what do you think? Because Johnny is surrendering real value, but he's surrendering 2 kind of lower end wide receiver 2s for wide receiver 1. It's kind of the way I look at this.
I feel like they're more mid-range wide receiver 2s, but you're probably right. Especially like if either of, I mean, like, I guess it depends what the fall off is. If you go from Zay Flowers to to Wan'Dale Robinson, there you go. There's a good one. If that takes Zay Flowers out of your flex and puts Wan'Dale Robinson in, I probably wouldn't do this.
You gotta be honest. Be real though. There's actually not as big of a difference between Zay and Wan'Dale as we'd probably like to believe. I know I'm kind of nitpicking because you're just explaining a principle more than individual, like harping on individual players. But yeah, I will say that.
I don't know. Zay had 100 yards last week, and I think that would be like the most career 100-yard games for Wan'Dale. I don't know if that's actually true. He's probably had him, but like at least Zay, I can look at the Ravens passing attack and be like, when they're pushed, which might be happening more often now, he can get explosive. For a guy like Wan'Dale, past the point. As long as you're not taking a big fall off from one of these guys to putting a really bad player in your flex, like Pat said, you should package up 2 good players for 1 great player.
And in general, that's just like a slam dunk trading principle. And sometimes it's not the worst thing ever to lose a trade like this. So you shouldn't be against trading a clearly better for 2 players if you just really need depth. But like, it's kind of the classic. So whatever, you trade 2 guys and you get AJ Brown. I mean, then say you have severe depth issues in 2 weeks. Then I don't know, just trade AJ Brown then for 2 or 3 players. Like, you can kind of spend, if you're willing to trade. No trade is ever as high risk as it appears if you're actually willing to trade. Maybe don't do it like if you're like a really prude trader, but like if you're willing to trade, there's always more money in the banana stand, basically.
I was going to say, there's always going to be a market for AJ Brown.
Yes. We have people telling us, by the way, Jay and Chad, that Rashee Rice has been declared out for the season. So it was fun while it lasted. Actually, it wasn't at all. It was very miserable and sad.
Yeah.
This chat was anything but miserable and sad. It was a really good time. We really, really appreciate all your participation. We appreciate it every week coming here and hanging out with us. So check out Kyle's waiver wire column. Waiver bids going in 24 hours from now. Check out my rankings later in the week. Check out my podcast with Denny on Tuesday. Kyle is back on Thursday for another episode of the Roto World Football Show. So for Kyle and Pat, thanks for listening. We will talk to you soon.